What does a pharmacist do? Well, most people might answer that a pharmacist dispenses the medications that my doctor prescribes. Now, I work with a ton of great pharmacists, and one thing that I don't generally see is excitement about pills in a vial. And this is probably because pharmacists have been trained to do so much more. So what can you get excited about in your community? To find out, let's go beyond the scripts. Hey, welcome back to Beyond the Scripts. I'm your host, Will Tuft with Pioneer RX. And today, of course, we have another special guest, but I wanted to start today's episode with a quick story, a legend. So in 1961, John F. Kennedy was visiting NASA, and a janitor walks by with a broom, and John F. Kennedy asks him, "What are you doing? Why are you working so late?" and starts a conversation. And the janitor responds, "I'm helping to put a man on the moon." So I'm a bit jaded to think that this actually happened, but even if it wasn't a historical fact that this conversation happened, I love the parable. I love the value of that conversation. He didn't say that I'm just a janitor. He said that he's helping with this much, much bigger goal and this much bigger purpose. And I definitely think that relates to pharmacy, and especially pharmacy technicians. And so today I want to welcome a special guest, Meredy Ayers, who is definitely helping to spread that same message of not saying that I'm just a pharmacist, but being definitely part of that bigger mission and that larger purpose of pharmacy. So thank you so much for joining us. Looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you, Will. It's awesome to be on.
So for anybody who has not had the pleasure of meeting you in person, tell me a little bit about yourself and how somebody in the realm of pharmacy may think that, hey, this girl looks familiar.
The pink hair is usually a giveaway. I've been in the pharmacy world since 1998. I've only worked for independent pharmacies, but more recently in the past few years, I've been pretty active with NCPA, National Community Pharmacists Association. I'm involved with PS3 Council for CPESN, and I'm currently a board of director for the Virginia Pharmacy Association, not the board of director, but on the board of directors. And I've done a lot of, especially with NCPA, the Show Me series, if anybody has seen those, teaching, going around. I did 2 of the 5 episodes with a partner, Tana Kafer, who I also work with here in Richmond. But, showing pharmacy owners that, number one, your technicians, let them support you, their support staff. That's the definition. Let us support you, get them involved in things so that the pharmacist can practice at the top of their license. So to show them that it's possible and we have the capabilities and that it doesn't have to be the owner or the pharmacist doing all of these things. So you've seen me talk about that. I've been on some panel discussions for some of the larger trade shows for McKesson or Cardinal. And then probably see me a lot online. I'm pretty active on my LinkedIn. And then Tana and I also have a combined Instagram account called The Talent RX, which stems from our NCPA Show Me series. Neither one of us know anything about show business. So when they put the talent on our call sheet, we thought, oh my gosh, they're calling us talented. And that's absolutely not what they were saying.
That's a technical term
on the call sheet.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, but it's grown into this huge thing. I got Doug Hoy, who's the CEO of NCPA, walked in and saw him in the middle of a hotel lobby, and he's like, the talent. And I was like, Tana, we've made it.
That's quite the recognition from quite the talented individual. So, yeah. So, okay. Interesting. Very busy current, but you have a very interesting past as well. You've been involved with some rock star pharmacies. So a lot of time at Bremo Pharmacy. Shout out to Catherine and her team there. Amazing pharmacy, high-performing independent pharmacy. Also, before that, you're at another rock star pharmacy, Buford Road Pharmacy. I was talking on the phone with Joseph not too long ago.
A long time.
Yeah, yeah. So you've been able to work with some really great teams. So you are one of the few guests that I've had on here who has only worked in independent. So how do you think that happened?
Um, I'd like to say luck,
Okay.
but luck, I don't really believe in luck. It's more of when I grew up in a very, very, very small town. Like, let's think Mayberry. And if nobody knows what Mayberry is, Google it because I'm not explaining it. But I'm, from a town where I didn't even know what an interstate was until I moved to Richmond to go to school. And so I got a after school job when I was a freshman in high school in 1998. And a clerk at an independent in Orange, Virginia. It was called Grimes Drugstore. It's not there anymore. Another independent pharmacy is there. And it was just, you either worked at the hardware store or you worked at the pharmacy. That was your after school job, right? So that's what I did 3 to 4 days a week. And I was the weekend shift because, the full timers wanted their weekends to themselves. And I'm like, I'm here for it. And I remember going in for my interview, and it wasn't really an interview because everybody in that small town knows each other. So,
Right.
it was like, the job is yours, but here's what I'm expecting from you. And so it started out with, we do things here, and I have the owner, oh gosh, Bill Morris was his name. Anybody knows him, tell him hi. I haven't seen him in a long time. He said that I have 3 things I expect from you. We don't lie, we're honest, and we don't steal. Those are the 3 requirements to work there. And it hit hard one day. I was working a Friday, and a lady came in and could not afford her medications, the copays on her medications. And I remember her going to the side where the pharmacist would talk to the patient, and she kind of whispered something, and I knew her obviously because small town, you know everybody. And I realized she handed him a check, and he gave her the medications. It didn't go through the register or anything like that. And I was like, weird. And this was back when you wrote the paper received, so the little tickets you had to file for signatures.
Sure.
Before the days of electricity. And
and 1998, 99. Gotcha.
And I remember him coming and pulling me aside and saying, listen, sometimes we do things for people because they need our help. And what had happened was she didn't have the money that day. It was going to come around the next week. So he was going to hold her check for her and cash it when she had the money. But he wanted her to have her medications. And that was when it really hit that community independent pharmacy, especially, means more than just filling prescriptions. And that's what did it. So I ended up moving to Richmond in 2002 to go to school for music. And again, independent pharmacy is a small world. And so I got a job at Buford Road Pharmacy with Ron Davis, who has since retired, but is my absolute end-all be-all mentor. Wouldn't be where I am without him. And I was there for 10 years.
Wow.
Learned so many things there. And to 2014, Catherine reached out to me here at Bremo about a bedside delivery program at our outpatient hospital pharmacy. And I was like, I don't know what that is. Let's do it. That pharmacy has since closed during COVID. It makes it really hard for patients to go in and out of a hospital when there's pandemic.
Sure.
So we've combined that with our retail pharmacy, but I'm still here in our training center. I've worked at every single location in the past 9 years that Bremo has to offer. And I'm having a fun time. This is a really cool company. We call it the Wonderland of pharmacy. If nobody's been here, definitely come by. I'll give you a tour. We do all the things.
So being from a small town, it seems like, so I grew up in a small town as well, kind of. I grew up in the middle of Pasadena, Houston for part of it, and then in the middle of nowhere, East Texas, 50 kids in my graduating class. So, I kind of saw the slice of both. And, there's a small town close by to us that, if you have a great hamburger joint that is local and It's a mom and pop's place. A small town is still going to be really excited when there's a nod from a big box or a franchise because there's something validating about, being a big enough town to have that. And anyone in a small town, I think, can relate to being excited about finally getting a whatever franchise. But, when you went to Richmond, was there any kind of draw to say, well, I'm in a bigger market now. I can do the things that I couldn't do back home. So I want to go to a big box or, was there any draw to do something different because you're in a different market?
So I have a friend and a coworker who always says you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And I stuck with what I knew.
Okay.
I don't do that now. But it never crossed my mind to look into the chains, the big box, the grocery stores, or anything like that for pharmacy. But when I went to work for Buford, when I came to Richmond, the way Richmond is set up is we have these little tiny areas. So they're all their own little small towns in theory. The James River goes through the city, and there are people who live in the south of the James who never cross to go north. Like they've lived here their entire lives, they just don't cross it. So when I went to Buford, they're in a tiny area of Richmond called Bon Air, which there's people who have been there for decades and they've never left. I mean, the interstate's right there. They can go wherever they want to at any given point, and they just don't. So it was actually kind of a nice transition to jump into something like that felt like a small town.
Yeah.
But then you still have everything surrounding you that is the city. And I didn't live anywhere near the pharmacy. I lived downtown Richmond because what else is a 17-year-old going to do when she moves to the big city? She's going to experience everything.
Sure.
But every day for work, I went to my little small town pharmacy, even though it was located in the capital of the state.
I love that. You see a lot of people kind of do the opposite, where normally you have to go to a city center for employment, but you want to move out of that for your personal life. So, kind of interesting. You've been able to see a couple different environments there. When you're working in an independent pharmacy, so one of the things that I think defines a small business is that you have that room to grow, and a successful small business that touches the community is going to have those authentic kind of woven tapestry of the people who are contributing, which you just you can't do that on a huge scale. It just doesn't really work that way. You need people to do a consistent A, B, and C. Yeah. So I think independent pharmacies especially really lend themselves to technicians kind of, branching into areas where they can make a difference. So looking back, can you kind of think about maybe the first time or one of the first times that you were, doing technician duties, making sure the right pills are in the bottle, and then, right? So you saw an opportunity for one of those first and thens.
There's been a lot of those.
Yeah.
But the first one I remember very clearly. I was working on the bench at Buford, and Ron Davis, who was the owner at the time, and he also worked on the counter every single day. That was his passion, talking to patients. Comes up to me and he goes, "I'm tired of spending my time on the phone with insurance companies for these stupid rejections. I want you to figure it out." Okay. He just didn't want to deal with it anymore. He was there to talk to the patients. That's what we're all there for. He's like, "But I want somebody who actually is into this kind of puzzle, but has the," I hate to say, we're going to use the word gumption, and that's going to show my age. But like
I love that
gumption
word. We don't use it enough. Yeah.
You know what I mean? To just, get on the phone with these PBMs and like figure out what's going on. And I was like, okay. And he literally just handed me like this scrap piece of paper. "Here's the prescription numbers I have rejected. Can you just go figure, just fix it?" Which ended up being a tagline of mine for a long time, was just fix it. And so I got an office.
Okay.
A few weeks later, they gave me an office. And this was back on the old QS1 CRX platform. and you had an online screen where you just watched the claims go through. Love it. It's my favorite. And the good thing about that system is you had all of your field names, the codes, like the field codes. And so that's how I learned how to use every other pharmacy system in the world. It's all
Sure.
super easy now because you know what you're looking at. And I remember being back there and I literally watched the online screen go. And I'd fix any rejection before the people on the front counter even knew it was rejected.
Oh, nice.
And so they got to be pretty spoiled. But that was what I did all day. I mean, I did other things. I took care of the prior auths. I did some DME billing, reconciliation, and workers' comp claims. And that was back when you filled out 1,500 forms by hand and mailed them in, and then hopefully they got there. But I would watch just that screen and check these rejections. And it was before, I mean, prior auths were a thing, but they were not as prevalent as they are now. So I would take care of the prior auths, and you faxed them, and you got fax responses and things like that. And then it kind of escalated from there. We had a board of pharmacy inspection, and, you know, it was just little things that, you know, you learn from these inspections. And I remember he came in and gave me the book of all the laws and all the things. And he's like, research all of this, read this book cover to cover, and fix everything there is on this list. Got it.
Which, as a pharmacist business owner, that has to be like, what a great move to make. Like, just to say, here you go.
Right. I mean, and that's just kind of how it grew from there.
Yeah.
Was here, do it, fix it. And there was like a little mini plaque on my desk for a while that just said, fix it, in quotes. A lot of pharmacy residents have come through in my time, a lot. And one of them will still text me and say, hey, fix it. And just a random text every so often. And I know exactly what he's talking about.
That's great.
So I was the fix it girl. Just fix it. I don't want to know what you did. I don't care what you did. Just fix it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about pharmacy billing in relation to medical billing or dental billing, you know, there's no MD or DDS that's sending, you know, claims and troubleshooting rejections. That's just not the way. That's not a good use of their time, and that's pretty established in other arms. But in pharmacy, you know, again, the independent pharmacist, so many things end up, you know, that's just another hat to wear.
Yep. And somebody sent me a meme on LinkedIn the other day, and I was like, okay, I see where you're going with this, but, you know, it says behind every good pharmacist is a good technician. And, you know, I see what they're saying. However, I'm not behind you. I'm right beside you.
Sure.
Because if it halts right here, then what are you going to do? Like, you've got, you know, my pharmacists are amazing. They have brains for drugs and the clinical aspect of things, logistics, workflow, billing, empathy. And they don't always not have the empathy, but, you know, things like that. That's a support staff trait. And we're beside you, working with you to complement each other. And we're there for the patient. Ultimately, it's about the patient. So why not work cohesively instead of one in front of the other? It's not that, we're beside each other.
Yeah. So when I started at Pioneer, I was part of the installation team. And so I got to go to about 40 pharmacies, 38, 40 pharmacies every year for 5 or 6 years. So I was on the road a lot. And so I got to spend a lot of time in independent pharmacies and see a lot of different kind of personality types and business structures, you know, and there were some where, you know, the pharmacist, there's one in particular, hardest working person I think I've ever seen, because he was just holding on to the handlebars so tight that, you know, everything was his responsibility. And you know, he made it really, really hard on himself because he was not delegating and using and trusting his team. And then, you know, I've been to pharmacies where the term tech is so like loosely applied to so many different roles, but where, you know, the technicians, I would walk in and you could see, okay, that's like the mother hen. She's running this bench and she has been here for a while and knows all of the in and outs. Or,
Don't mess with her.
yeah. Or if you go into the back at, the other week when we were in North Carolina, when you go into the back at Joe Moose's pharmacy, and you see the technicians who have taken ownership of the packaging area. It's really interesting to see how that role applies. So, how have you seen that, different owners struggle with that, or different technicians are willing to step up? Because I think if you're a technician who goes into independent pharmacy, you kind of want to continue to engage. If you wanted to put, a square peg in a square hole and leave for the day, I don't think you would go to an independent pharmacy.
No.
So.
And that's not to say, so this is actually a big thing I talk about a lot. There are technicians that are, we always call them one of the super techs. And then you have people that put the pills in the bottle. They put the pills in the bubble. That's what they do. We still need that. That
Sure.
still has to exist. But that's not saying, and some people are not interested in advancing more, and that's fine. But keeping them engaged is super important. They got to transparency. The first Show Me episode that we did was in Philadelphia. And it was Chris and Gwendolyn O'Neill in Philadelphia. And they are so amazing. I love them so much now. We have a group chat that goes on. It's been about a year, not even a year yet, maybe 10 months. They were running their pharmacy. It was them and I think 2 to 3 techs and a delivery driver. And their business model about 7-8 years ago when they opened was fill prescriptions. Not going to work. I mean, if you're in pharmacy at all these days, filling prescriptions is not where it's at.
Sure.
Right. So, but they weren't doing immunizations. They're not doing med sync. They're not doing any of those other things. And so we were talking to them about it. And it turns out the owner, well, they were both owners, but Chris was the PIC. He wasn't releasing anything. He had a hard time releasing anything, ordering, inventory, doing sync, period. Anything that, a patient would come into the store and something a technician could answer, they were constantly pulling him because they weren't sure what they could and couldn't do with him being there and having such that tight grab. And since then, we're friends on social media as well. He's taken his first vacation since they've opened that store. Their technician has taken over their inventory. I think they're in the beginnings of sync. It's not an easy thing to jump into. So they're in the midst, in the weeds. They're targeting patients. Their technicians are targeting patients for immunizations that they're eligible for. Other services they can start building onto. Anything else that can be beneficial to their patients. And the technicians are doing that work, and they're leaving the clinical things to the pharmacist, which is amazing. I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And in Philadelphia, you do not have to be certified to work there as a technician. That's an issue in its own self, but they had completely capable technicians. They were amazing. And because they don't have to be certified, I was talking to one of them and he's like, I'm going to go get certified anyway. And I said, I think that's going to show your initiation that you're serious about this. You're going to be here for a while. And when that happens, and it may have already happened, I haven't talked to him, but technicians can immunize now, things like that. Whatever the owner is comfortable with you doing, let them do it. Get them to the max of their license so that the pharmacists can be at the max of their license. And that's going to build you a much better business platform. Much better.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, some of the really high performing pharmacies that I've visited were, exactly that being able to let go a little bit, delegate, and give ownership. And that's really special when you can find that fit where you're able to give ownership a little bit to somebody and they're not just performing a task, but they're championing that purpose of concentrating on inventory or, not to say you only want one person on your team to do any one task, but to have that champion must be such a weight off of the owner, but also, you're putting more manpower on that.
Absolutely. Everything's going to be more accurate. Instead of having everybody doing all the things, having one, maybe two people doing all the things, each individually, it's more efficient. It's definitely more efficient. And we're offering more services as time goes on. Pharmacy can do more. There's the big movement of primary care and pharmacies. Now, I can't speak on that, but if that's the way we're going, technicians are going to have to step up even more. So let them run your sync program. Let them do your inventory. Let them compound. We have a technician here. Her full-time job is compounding in our lab. That's all she does. We have a technician that runs a compression hose clinic full-time. One that runs a weight loss clinic full-time. And I've actually had to talk to them a few times when they say, well, I don't like to do pharmacy. I don't like to do technician work. I'm like, but you're doing technician work. That's what you're doing. You're just not counting pills. And I know that's what you think in your head. But I do technician work, and I don't work on the bench ever. So we got to change the technician mindset and then change the owner and the pharmacist mindset. But maybe we can do it all together.
Yeah. I mean,
I'll try to find that answer.
I think the role of pharmacist has definitely evolved past pills in a bottle in most pharmacies. And I think technician roles have definitely started to more commonplace, exceed that role. If not, clearly Amazon's pharmacy initiatives would have just conquered the world if that was the most important thing that a pharmacy or even a technician does is put pills in a bottle. Amazon would have won that game. And clearly that hasn't been the case because there's so much more value and it's so important to have that local touch. So all of this is still happening at Buford, right? So you're really busy at Buford. What were there any other kind of initiatives that you took on while you were there? Because something caught Catherine's eye, evidently.
I'd be willing to bet it was that whole everybody knows everybody in independent pharmacy. Yeah. But you remember back when the swine flu came around? What was that? 2009, 2010, I think.
Oh yeah, that was a fun pandemic. That was much more fun than COVID.
There was a flu shot shortage at one point, and then you'd get a big allotment in. I mean, they set me up at a table at Buford, and people were coming in, and it was near the beginnings of Advantage plans with Medicare. So pharmacies were afraid to just blindly take people's forms and bill them later because you didn't know if you get paid, because you didn't know if you were contracted to the Advantage plan. It was a whole thing. So I sat at this fun little card table at the side of the store and kind of in the gift area. They have a gift spot over there. And people, we had a line out the door. It was an old IGA grocery building, so it was massive. And people were just lined out the door. They were ready to get their flu shot. And I sat there for hours just typing information and billing it at the time so that we could get an immediate response to see where it was going to go. And it was back when if you don't have the name exactly right, if you don't have this exactly right, if you forgot their apartment, it was a whole thing. My guess is when Catherine reached out, I'm sure there was a conversation had with Ron that I was not aware of.
I'm sure.
But I had told her when I talked to her originally that I like to do non-traditional things. And I used those words quite a bit. And now I don't use those words anymore because everything technicians do is traditional to me now. But I wasn't interested in counting the pills or doing things like that. Every now and then you want to do that because it's just kind of nice to get back into the groove. But I like doing non-traditional things. And she's like, I have this bedside delivery thing. I think you could kill it because I'm a process-driven person. And she's like, let's do it. So I left. Ron had since sold Buford Road to a different owner, and he was still on as part of that. He was there for about a year after he sold it. And I was not allowed to leave unless he gave the blessing. So Bremo is in Midtown Richmond. We're right off of Interstate 64, in between like Virginia Commonwealth University and then like University of Richmond. So it's a very different demographic. But it was a cool transition because Bremo does different things than Buford does. Totally different world. but the partnership of independence is still there. Richmond has a lot of independence. We recently, one closed that was less than a mile from us. The owner retired, so we took on their clients because, they really met our core values and the clientele we already serve. But we still have some independents around, and they're all different. They all do different things.
Yeah, it is always neat to see just kind of how independent pharmacies end up just kind of molding to their community and their community's needs. And, I remember the first couple I went to, just how drastically different each one of these were, because I kind of went into this from an IT role, and I stepped into pharmacies expecting them all to have, this all to be kind of the same general building and layout and feel and personality and culture, and no, that was not the case at all. So
I thought the same thing.
Okay, so you pop over to Bremo and you're working on meds to beds. What else is going on at Bremo that you think is different than your standard fill and bill pharmacy? So if somebody came from a just straight fill and bill pharmacy, what are you going to tell them to expect on day one when they join as a technician?
We do all the things. Medical equipment's a huge one.
Yep.
Compression hose, things like that. The girl here who runs it is a pharmacy technician, and in her past life, she was a bookkeeper. So that was a huge change for her. But she loves making it an experience, and she does appointment-based, and appointment-based everything is where we got to go. And so she makes appointments. She's, 3 to 4 appointments in the morning, every morning for compression fittings. She makes it a full experience in her clinic. They get the full rundown. She measures them. She shows them how to put them on, take them off, things like that. Breast pumps were a huge thing when I came here. We don't do them anymore. We've been kind of pushed out of the market, but being at a hospital for postpartum patients, I walked in the first day and I was like, we do what? Oh, okay. And then they're like, can you go deliver this to their bedside? I'm like, well, that's cool. Compounding, which, I'd done compounding in the past, but not to the extent that we do it here at Bremo.
Yeah.
We do hazardous, non-sterile. We have a really cool lab. We have a really cool technician who runs it full time. She's amazing. I have some background in compounding, but there's no way I could ever step into her role. She's just one of our clinical pharmacists, really relies on her with different hormone things and stuff like that. And people don't realize when they see Bremo, we don't have compounding in our name, so they don't know that we do it. But number two, what does that mean? So educating is huge. We have a training center, so we have courses. I am connected to the classroom, and we have a huge classroom that holds about 35 students. We do med management training, which is a course that trains people to pass meds in group homes or day supports. So we train them to do that and it's a lot of the group homes that we work with our long-term care pharmacy. We teach a pharmacy technician course, newly ASHP accredited.
Yeah, which I think is super, super cool. What a great way to engage the next generation, but also, if you're going to be teaching the next generation, I think that's a really great way to keep your team engaged and continuously learning and evolving and excited. So that's a really neat thing that I haven't seen at any other independents.
So cool. Obviously during COVID, we couldn't use it because we couldn't be in person. So it turned into our makeshift vaccine room. So we had 3 cubbies that we used for teaching, and the 3 cubbies turned into where you got your shot. And then we kind of funneled you into the classroom for your 15 minutes afterwards. And we had kids clinics. We had Disney movies playing. We had snacks. And then the adult clinics, they didn't get the snacks or the Disney movies. But it was an opportunity for our marketing team to, put some information up about what we're doing outside of just pharmacy. It was a really cool experience. So we still used it as a classroom to teach something. It was just non-traditional. But the tech class has been so fun. we teach our simulations in the classroom, which we have I call it tiny pharmacy because it's a mock pharmacy. There's no real medications, but it's shelves of medication of old bottles with candy in it. Obviously, you can't have the real thing in there. They compound. They make bath bombs with citric acid and sodium bicarbonate. They're learning about communication skills, soft skills, which I can teach anybody how to count pills. I can teach anybody to compound, but teaching them communication skills is probably more important to me than anything else.
Sure.
And of course, those two simulations are the ones I teach because, the course, it has you here. And these poor students come in and they're like, what did I get into? Because I'm like, I'm going to have you here. You're here. I'm going to put you here. One of them is about angry patients and how to deal with an angry patient and where is that stemming from and become empathetic with their situation. And I had a coworker just bust into the class one day and pretend like she was an angry patient. It was perfectly timed. And I was like, all right, go. What are you going to do? Deal with her. So we have a lot of fun and they're remembering things because they're doing it before they're doing it. And it's so cool to see. I'm excited about it. I taught one last Friday and I was like, the best way I can compare this to real world is a car mechanic. You go to the car mechanic and unless you're a car person, well, you're probably not going to the car mechanic anyway. They're going to tell you what everything is you need done to your car. And you have no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah.
So when a patient comes into your pharmacy and you start saying, well, your medication needs a prior authorization, that person hasn't a clue what you're talking about. So, don't get frustrated. Just remember you're on the other end of it at the car mechanic. And that was the best scenario I could think of to explain the empathy part of it is just remember you know what you know. They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. That was something Marcia spoke to on a recent podcast over on the Catalyst was, that getting out of the jargon where, you are communicating with your patients using terms that they understand. If you tell me that I need a new, fuel injector and I'm not a car person, that's doesn't really help if you say, hey, look, there's a piece that connects, the fuel tank to, the fuel line to, the whatever. And you go through the anatomy of the manifold for me. And all of a sudden, okay, well, I guess that piece does sound pretty important. So,
and what's cool is I'm getting these people like in the early stages. So it's not like I'm talking to my coworkers where they do know what a prior auth is. They don't know either. So I am talking to the lay person currently. They don't know what it is. So it gives them a little bit more of a ground zero of where to start with patients when they start talking to patients, and they won't get sucked into the day-to-day jargon.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're going to remember everything I said. Who knows?
So at Bremo, if you are a technician, and you guys aren't like an extremely lean staffed pharmacy by any means, right? You guys have quite a few pharmacists on deck. And then how large is your technician team?
A lot.
A lot.
We just hired, 7 in a week a few months ago because we brought on that other pharmacy. So our retail business doubled overnight back in November.
Yeah.
And so that happened. And so we had to bring in technicians that, could help us with that. We brought in some staff from the previous pharmacy that we had bought and brought in some amazing technicians. Everybody who came in was amazing. So we have, oh gosh, I'm just guessing, maybe 20 technicians.
Yeah. So I'm thinking back to some of the pharmacies that I visited where, again, incredibly dedicated owners, but there's no way they would be comfortable taking on, a whole other pharmacy's business without having that trusted team in place. So how do you think those different areas have evolved? Was that, primarily leadership down? Was there, from the bench up? Does it go both ways? How have you seen that work well?
Both.
Yeah.
Our PIC down. So I keep saying our retail store. We have 2 separate locations, and our retail location is what doubled. Our long-term care one did too a few weeks later, but that's a different story. we have a great PIC down there, Regina, and she brought them together, and it happened. It just happened. Obviously, it's a struggle to double your workload overnight, no matter if you have new help or not. The new help still has to learn. So it was a team effort. It was everybody on board. The entire company got on board, not just that location. And at the end of the day, again, it was about the patient. So we wanted to make sure they were taken care of, and we did, and we still are. It was a top-down, and this is an unpopular opinion, and not an opinion of Bremo by any means. I'm not a huge fan of top-down. Unfortunately, that's just how it is in some places. But here we have the opportunity to do a lot of that. So it's top-down, but they also listen to everybody and take all of those opinions into account. And so, yeah, we had to make some changes and workflow changes and implement new technology and new bodies. And we have amazing technicians that jumped in that were new, and just, it was like they've been here forever. I did go help quite a few days just to keep it going. Because, people still need time off. They still are sick and things like that. We're in the middle of a flu season when all this happened. And they just came together. It was just like glue. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And then our long-term care pharmacy, a few weeks later, had the opportunity to take on a statewide company of group homes. And that happened. And so we didn't quite double back there, but we took on quite a few. And so we had to get more technicians for back there. So I may be completely off with my number of technicians, but we have over 50 employees in general.
So take me to, let's pretend in this scenario, Tuesday afternoon, we make the decision that, okay, we're going to take on all of these patients from another pharmacy. Walk me through the Wednesday morning staff meeting. How does that, how do you get everyone on board and positive, and everybody, moving in the same direction with a change like that? Because that's big.
Transparency was huge.
Yeah.
Catherine was transparent. Regina, as the PIC, was transparent. It was, here's what's happening. Here's the plan. We can always shift when we need to, but, are you guys on board? Let's do this. And, it's never how you think it's going to be when it turns out, but in execution, you're like, well, that's not what we thought it was going to be, but nobody can see into the future. But it was always positive. And the cool thing here is our staff, we have quarterly staff meetings in general. They're scheduled staff meetings for the whole company to come together. And, you think of a staff meeting as like a complaint session, and has never happened in the 9 years I've been here. We have, awards that we give out. It's called a 2-minute rah-rah, where she takes 2 minutes, it's usually more than 2 minutes, out of the meeting, and everybody can just say what they want to say about something cool that happened. Like, somebody maybe would be like, hey, Will, you did a great job the other day talking to Mr. Jones about this. I just want to shout you out. And we get we have delivery drivers that are our own staff. They're not contracted. And we shout them out quite a bit, because you can only imagine how many deliveries we do a day. And so things like that. And it's always a positive experience. We did a leadership training. They brought in Kelly Babcock and Terry Norvell from Leadership Growth Formula. We had a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, just intense training for any staff that wanted to do it, not just managers. And that's really played a part into our follow-up staff meetings, where they're like, hey, we learned this a few months ago. Let's not forget we learned this. So here's how we're going to remember to do it. There's incentives. It's just, you don't even, obviously everybody has a bad day.
Sure.
But when you think about it, to work in pharmacy, this is where you want to be. You don't want to be, even on your worst day here. It's the best day somewhere else.
So let's pull the curtain even further, because everything that you just told me is perfect. And if I talk to the owner of a pharmacy, they're probably going to say the same thing. Hey, look, it's really positive. We try to engage everyone, and we try to listen to everybody, and it all works. So when that owner leaves the room and now it's the, the technicians and the rubber meets the road, I guess, how do you see that you're, you're kind of in that mix where, how do you see that team is able to stay positive and engage, and continue that culture outside of, when the boss is watching, right? Like how do you get that authenticity within a team and
Struggle with that, let me tell you.
yeah, but how do you guys find that you help, coach yourselves, because that negative talk can be detrimental, and it's easy to see. I mean, we've all been places that we've seen it.
And I am the queen of being stuck in my head. I call it shower conversations.
Sure.
As it's the worst times where you're like in the car, you're in the shower, and you're just constantly like replaying the conversation, or, man, I'm going to go in and tell him this today. And
yeah,
no, I'm not. I'm going to fester. I'm going to keep festering. And don't get me wrong, things are not perfect. But the fact that we know that, and we know that we're striving for our core values. They're on our website, our core values. The owners and the board of trustees here do not make any business decisions unless they align with our core values. Whether it can be the biggest moneymaker in the world, if it doesn't align with the core values, kaput. And I think knowing that gets us through those bad days, as that negative talk.
Yeah.
And you're always kind of in your own little world because we're such a big independent pharmacy. And I'm, some people are separated out from what day-to-day things are happening with their employees. You get in your own head like, well, that's not fair to me, or, well, why are they doing it that way? And when you circle back with the leadership training we had, especially, but even prior to that, you stop and think, number one, I tell a lot of people, compare it to the last job you had. We're at a career here and not just a job. They actually value us as people. And so to kind of regroup on those bad days and those negative thoughts makes you feel so much better. Like there's that, that text message group of, I can't believe this happened. And then there's always somebody who's like,
leave that group.
Yeah, I know.
You don't need it.
I already have it in my brain. And there's always somebody really cool, and it's always somebody different each time. And it's like, you know what, guys, it's not even that bad. Yeah. And something really cool happens the next day, and you're like, well, that was nothing, and I forget about it in a few weeks. So by no means is every day here, rainbows and unicorns. But it's, things happen everywhere. But we work, the cool part is we work together to fix it.
I love that, because that's really what it takes. I mean, the pharmacist, the owner, the board, they can have the best ideas, and having that unified team, that tapestry of those individuals, all aligned is just so important. And so I'm always just amazed when I see pharmacies that have been able to put that together so well and have that exciting culture.
There's always going to be a growing pain whenever any pharmacy brings on a new service or new people, or growing pains aren't just for when we were kids and teenagers. It happens everywhere. So just knowing it's probably temporary.
Yeah.
So that gets you through it. And again, my favorite is, my worst day here is still better than my best day somewhere else.
I love that. Yeah. Perspective is a heck of a thing, isn't it?
It really is. As I get older, I keep finding that.
All right. My favorite example of that, and I think about it so often. I was tired. It was a super, super long install day, and it was late at night. I didn't get back to the hotel till 1 a.m, and I had to eat fast food and just get a burger to go, and I'm just exhausted and grumpy about it. And I get on social media, and my little brother had posted a picture where he was like in a tent in Kandahar, and yeah, he would have loved that comfortable bed and familiarity of American fast food, and just being right where I was at. And so it's a nice bit of a perspective to have sometimes. When you're having a bad day.
Is such a cliche, but it's
Yeah. So what else is exciting coming down the pipeline? I know you were recently at the CPESN mid-year meet. We got to see you there.
Oh, one of my favorite meetings. Loved it.
Yeah, was such a good show. So,
So
what are you
good.
excited about?
Christine Klein-Dahlman, who's head of the PS3 Council, we're working on a couple projects. I'm personally working on kind of I don't want to say plug and play, but something structural for technicians to use as a career path. I don't want to say ladder because, we want to go out and branch out in different places. Um, Talking about defining your job role a little more. If you want to be outside of that count by five situation, there's billing, there is insurance specialist. You can become a CHW now, which is community health worker, which is amazing. I'm in the middle of doing that course myself. Do you want to teach? Do you want to be in IT? It's cool to have an IT person that knows pharmacy. Marketing. We have a marketing team here that I'm on, a few other technicians are on, and Catherine. Compounding. Do you want to be a part of the operations? Do you want to do whatever that is? And then finding that route for them to get there.
Yeah.
So that's a huge passion of mine because I've been fortunate to have mentors that guided me. And now I've kind of learned to just take it on myself. So I want to be that mentor for other people. And I'm working with Mike Johnston at NPTA, National Pharmacy Technician Association, on some other projects coming up. Keep an eye out. You'll see my pink hair everywhere. Hopefully everywhere. And oh gosh, all sorts of places and all sorts of things. And I'm always willing to jump in and help anybody with something they're working on. I like to give and hear input to see what's
Yeah.
happening somewhere else because I'm in my world. I want to be a part of that world to see what's happening over there. We both know Serena out in Washington State.
Yeah. Your purple haired
My
counterpart.
purple how
Yeah.
yeah, we did a panel together and I was like, I feel like it's a requirement to be tattooed and have colored hair. Poor Tim Mitchell stuck out like a sore thumb. But she's great with feedback. I haven't talked to her. We do weekly meetings for PS3 Council, but she was amazing back when we saw each other. We would kind of bounce ideas back and forth. Her job is totally different than mine, which is totally different than other people's. So getting that fresh look at things and what are they struggling with and what can I help build for other technicians to use so they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah. Love that. So the community health worker, do you think that is going to be next up on the plate at Bremo? Is that something you're looking into personally? I mean, it's something that I keep hearing.
Me too.
Every trade show I go to, it's one of those keywords that popped up maybe 2 years ago, and then you hear it everywhere now.
Kind of, yeah, it did a little thing, and now it's like, hey, we're doing this.
Yeah, yeah.
So we have one CHW already. Our state of Virginia requires 2,000 hours of hands-on work to complete it to be certified. However, she is still considered a CHW. She's still working on her hours. I just started my course last night. I did it for myself, but I did it, the State Pharmacy Association here in Virginia is really kind of taking hold of it with technicians in the state. So I did it for that reason. And then also it always tends to, it's perfect timing here at Bremo because then they're like, hey, when do you want to do your CHW?
So what does that mean if somebody's not familiar with that? And so how does that relate to what pharmacies are already doing, and how does it just kind of set standards for that practice?
So a community health worker does not have to be a technician. You don't have to be in healthcare. However, there is a big push for technicians to do it because we already have the healthcare knowledge. So it's really there to help your community, obviously community health worker, and help them with resources in their community if they cannot get to them otherwise. We talk about food deserts and healthcare deserts. And so to have somebody who can reach out and do blood pressure checks, blood glucose tests, but also give them resources for food. Do they have enough money for food or rent to get to the doctor? Making choices that, you and I would not necessarily have to make every day. So we're there to build these resources and then use them and reach out to people to counsel them on different things, not to be mistaken with counseling on medications. We know technicians don't do that, but we can counsel on these resources and aid and things like that. And so technicians are in a perfect place to be able to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so interesting to think about social determinants and look at how social, you know, understanding can be improved to really change a patient's position. If especially in small towns where you do encounter those food deserts, where most of the food now is available in packages, and you don't have those neighborhood groceries there anymore. Understanding those challenges and helping coach those patients through that is such a big part of, all of the underlying conditions that you're treating with medication.
Yeah. And there's a trust you build there for people that maybe would not go anywhere else for help. But as a healthcare provider, which technicians are, they have a trust already built with you because you have that. And so to have that extra education is just beneficial to them, to the community. You've built that trust already, and you just keep building on it to say, hey, here's what I recommend you do, and go here. Let's get you taken care of this week. Let's get you taken care of with this. Let's get your mom on board with this. And, that conversation builds the relationship.
Love it. All right. It looks like we're about at time. I'm going to let you get back to work. Thank you so much for joining us. Definitely want to pick your brain some more. So keep in touch, and definitely come back on and keep me updated with everything's going on with Snazzy RX, with Bremo, and, anything exciting that you're seeing. I'm sure I'm going to run into you this summer out on the road at some trade shows.
Hope so. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. What do you have on deck? Anything solidified?
I know you'll see me at NCPA, not until October. Have no idea what else is on my calendar right now. You'll see me.
All right. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you around.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond the Scripts, presented by the Catalyst Pharmacy Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please support our channel by liking, subscribing, and clicking the notification bell so that you'll be notified anytime we post new content. To stay up to date with all of the latest independent pharmacy news and content, follow Pioneer RX on your preferred social media platform.